one of the reasons, maybe the major reason that holds people back, that um, it's not things that happen outside them. It is actually what's going on inside their mind. That their mind is what's stopping them from being more successful. So the more that we can identify what those mind blocks are, the more that we can address them, and then we can move forward. Um, all actions start first in the mind. So everything begins in the mind. All actions follow whatever it is we think in the mind is. So our mind is going to dictate every action we take. So I'll give you an example that's not about business, um, but it was something I wrote about in my book, Going to the Net. And this is a book that's ostensibly about tennis, um, and the psychology of tennis, but it's really about business as well and about life too. Um, but anyway, so I've been playing tennis all my life. I started when I was like 6 years old, and I was pretty good at it. I played very high end competitive tennis for a long time, even into my senior years. And I was a tennis teacher for 5 years at one of the top tennis resorts or tennis camps in the world. So I've had a lot of experience playing tennis, and through all of that, from my own experience and from working with other tennis players, coaching them, is that the part of the psychology of everything was a thing that was really um, not addressed. You know, people were working on their forehand and their backhand and their serve, but they weren't working on their their mental game. You know, and so there were all kinds of things that happened. One time, I was playing somebody, and I was ranked higher than him, but I wasn't playing very well that day, and he was playing better. And so he got up, I think like 5-1 in the first set. Um, and then I saw this weird thing happen to him. I just saw his mind kind of take over. And what he said to himself is, I shouldn't be beating Bill because he's ranked higher than me. Um, so I ended up winning the set 7-5. So he just gave up. And he could have beaten me easily, but his mind said to him, I can't beat Bill. I shouldn't be beating him because he's a better player than me. You know, he walked on the court saying, Bill is a better player than me. And I've had the same thoughts go through my head, but I'm able at this point to see that and go, yeah, that's just a thought. I'm playing better than him today. Um, there's no reason why I shouldn't beat him, you know, even though he's ranked higher than me right now. But the bigger issue I had was similar to that, although it was from for a different reason. That I would get ahead in a set playing tennis, like I'd be up 5-1, um, and then I would start feeling bad, and I would feel guilty that I was going to beat him, and then I sometimes I would let them win, sort of without really realizing it, and I would lose 7-5. And I had to start to look at that and go, why do I keep doing that? And I realized there was this weird thought that I had, which was, well, if I beat him, then I'm a bad person. I'm beating him, right? And somewhere I got that into my head when I was a kid. So, but as soon as I knew that that was what I was thinking, it all went away because I went, okay, well, that's ridiculous. You know, I'm not a bad person if I beat him. We're just playing a game. But I could see, well, years I had been doing that. So that was a mind block that I had in tennis, right? Um, the stakes are pretty low when you're playing tennis, obviously. But I always say that games like that are useful because it does help you, learn about yourself, right? If you want to use games to do that. Okay, so we've got these mind blocks, and we're just going to focus on um, your business today, but maybe that helped you with your tennis or your maybe your pickleball, even, right? So let's think about what these five are, okay? And there's actually about 100. Okay, I started making a list, but that's going to be way too many to talk about and too much to deal with all at once, right? Okay, so let's start with the first one. Um, This is the big idea future network. So I thought we'd kick it off with the status quo mind block. They call it the status quo um, bias in behavioral economics, but I don't get into all that fancy talk. So we just say status quo mind block. What does that mean? Well, as human beings, we have this tendency to be unable to imagine that the future will be much different than the present, way we're living right now. And I think it's just about fear. I think we have a fear of the future, and we don't really want things to change. So we just if we think about the future at all, um, it's usually just kind of an extension of what's going on right now. So one kind of fascinating thing I like is to look at what somebody in the 1930s thought world would look like in the year 1970 or something, right? And usually it involved flying cars. There was always flying cars. I don't know why, but everybody really wants flying cars. Still haven't got that one. But it was always this extension of that particular time, right? It's so interesting. So when we think now today in 2024, and we think into the future, we go, okay, well, there'll probably just be faster computers, right? Makes sense. And a better iPhone, maybe, a thinner one or something. Um, and it'll just be like really fast or something. And now we have AI. I guess we could start thinking there's going to be something there with that. But it's really hard to us imagine that everything could be different. Reimagine everything being different. And that's dangerous, because that's actually what happens. That ultimately everything is different. And so that's why we always have to have our new factory we're working on and saying that's the future business, and we can reimagine anything, and try to think about, okay, how can I keep up with this completely new world that's going to happen? I did a little experiment with my son. Like, we're both into hockey and talking about hockey and the hockey game, Stanley Cup games and stuff. And so I was talking. I said, "Well, how many years on average does it take for an NHL hockey team to go from one roster to a completely different one? Like, how many years does it take till it's a completely different team, right?" So we kind of did a little informal study with the Toronto Maple Leafs, and the Toronto Maple Leafs 13 years ago was a completely different roster. So we actually figured out a fast way to do it. We just said, well, who's the player that's been on the team longest? And that was 13 years. So we go, well, that's how long it took before the team was completely different, right? We actually then started looking at baseball and other sports, and baseball is actually much quicker. I can't remember how many years, but baseball turns over much faster. But anyway, but that's an interesting thing, because you realize, okay, as time goes on, everything slowly, every little piece keeps changing until one day you wake up and go, everything is completely different, right? Now, it's also interesting why we can't imagine that, because if we look back like 13 years ago and we go, right, well, it was a completely different team, right? The world was completely different. Look at all the things that have changed. We can see it in retrospect, but when we think forward, we can't. So that's usually the ultimate repercussion of this is that we don't plan for a different kind of future. We think things will just continue to be the same. And I guess that's wishful thinking, right? But dangerous for Kodak or Blockbuster or Sears and all the different companies that just never bothered changing anything. And yet the world around them kept changing, and eventually they became, your proverbial dinosaur, right? And went extinct. So that's the first one. And it just the best advice on that one, but just say, okay, well, we have our present, and we want to live in the present for sure, but we want to have this second project, which is the future, and work on that future business. So in my case, my future business has to do with AI. There's a few other things that I won't get into right now, but it is quite different than what I'm doing right now, what I'm imagining now, because I want to reinvent myself, and there's things that I haven't done yet, and I want to have a container for that. So that's what my new factory project is a container for that reinvention to do the things that I haven't been doing on my hot dog stand, for example. Okay. So I'm really encouraging you to think about, build that new factory. And, my advice has always been, think really big about that future, but then start small. So what we've come down to is spend 89% of your time on the present, your old factory, and 11% of your time on the new factory. So I've made a commitment to spend 5 hours a week on the new factory. It's a little more than probably 11%, but 5 hours. And I have a stopwatch when I start working on it, and I track the time. And if I can get my 5 hours in, I'm going to be good. I feel like I'm working on the future, and it's all good. So 11%. Make it 11% because it's actually easier to remember than 10%. 10% sounds like you just kind of 10%, right? But 11%. Okay, well, how much time is that? Okay, so we got to get out of this status quo mind block. It's brutal. The second mind block, which is really something I talked about back in the 90s, and it was really the first mind block that I really helped people address, which was the product first mind block. So I call it the product first trap back in those days. And basically what that means is that we think that our business is our product and our product is our business. So whatever it is that we're selling right now, and I was talking about hammers, so we're selling hammers. Well, hammers is our business, and our business is hammers. Okay, and that has the virtue of being simple, right? So you wake up in the morning, you can go, all right, it's hammers. That's what I do. And so we go out in the world and we try to sell hammers. So everything we're thinking about first with our business is that product, right? Product first, right? And that used to be a pretty good thing to do because in the Industrial Revolution, people needed products. The whole world, most people didn't have proper shoes. So if you were selling shoes, a lot of people would buy your shoes. A lot of people didn't have hammers, right? So if you sell hammers, you might sell a lot of hammers. But we're in a completely different world right now. Some people call it the post-capitalism era. I don't know. Actually, we're in the post-capital or late capitalism. That's it. What they say, late capitalism. I don't know about that, but basically, I think what they mean is it's a very mature period in the economy where everybody has a hammer. I have 11 hammers now, I think, or something. So if we're in the product first trap, we're missing out on opportunity because maybe your customers actually want something else. Maybe they want screwdrivers. Maybe they want ladders. Maybe they want ham sandwiches. Maybe they want life insurance. But you think, well, none of those things have anything to do with me. But that's not necessarily true. That's just the product first mind block saying that I have to stay with hammers. That's because that's my business, right? Anything else is something else. That's not my business. None of my business, right? But that's not what Apple does. Apple thinks, well, what else could we do? That's their attitude. What else could we add to our value hub? What else could we do? So they have an open mind as far as their products, what they could sell people. And then they don't have to always make the product, right? They don't make apps and music and things like that. Well, they do, but most of the apps are made by other people. So they've broken away from that mind block. They've opened up their mind because obviously that's the opposite of a mind block, right? That we have an open mind. The block is gone. So this is the way past that. Now let's just think first about why this would be also bad to be in the product first mind block. One is you're missing out on opportunity because maybe there's something else you could sell people. Maybe eventually people don't need what you want. Let's go back to the first main block. So you're kind of stuck. Everybody wants screwdrivers, and you go, well, I guess I'm out of business now because everybody wants screwdrivers. Nobody wants hammers anymore. And there's no thought, well, we could just switch to screwdrivers. Like there's no thought. They think, well, that's wrong. I can't do that. But so they don't reinvent themselves as screwdrivers. Now, I wouldn't necessarily say that you're just going into another product first mind block with the screwdrivers, but at least it's opening your mind up to say, well, anything now is possible, right? So, and then of course you can get disrupted because, you've got hammers, but now nobody needs hammers because we're using 3D printing or something. So how do we get past that? So it is this idea of having a value hub, that your business is that. So I say in your old factory, let's just be product first. We're just going to sell hammers. In our new factory, we're going to be creating a value hub around our customers. We could do anything for them. And most of those things, we'll just partner up with someone else to provide. So I'm not going to make screwdrivers, but I could work with a company that does to bring them to my customers because they might buy that. I mean, that's Amazon, right? Amazon's like the ultimate value hub. So this is probably the most, from a standpoint of what your value proposition, it's the most important mind block to get past, because what is your value proposition? Is it hammers? One of the ways to reinvent yourself is to just look at your value proposition in a bigger way. So you can say, well, I sell hammers. That's my value proposition. People need hammers. I give it to them. But really, aren't you in the business of helping people build things? That's your business. So if you think, well, actually, my business is helping people build things. Well, what are different ways that I could help people build things? And so that starts to become a different way of. Hang on, I'm just going to mute here somebody's sound. Anyway, so so we're in the business of helping people build things. Then we go, well, what are all the ways that we could help people build things? And then that becomes a better way to think about your business and gets past that product first mind block. The other way to get past it, of course, is to start thinking about your customers more. And I'll get more into that in a minute, but basically, we have the relationship first approach, which is say my business is about helping these people, and anything I can do to help them is my business. So that gives you permission to go past that particular product that you're caught up in, and also the industry you're in, because that's the other thing, is that we then say, well, I'm in an industry, so I can't go beyond that either. The confines of that industry, what I'm in, and that's it. Your customers, and no one in the world is actually telling you that. Maybe a regulator or something's trying to tell you that, but there's ways around that. So that's the product first mind trap. Number 3 is the start big mind block. Okay. Start big. So over and over and over, I tell people, we got your new factory. We're going to think big about it. We're not going to put any restraints on what we could imagine about this new thing. But then we're going to start small. Okay. And something really small, like we're going to take this pen, the Apple pen, and I'm going to just move it over here. Okay. I just did something, that's the beginning of my big idea. That's it. I just did that. Then I'll think of what's the next small thing I can do. Right. Hey, well, maybe, move back over here. Okay. For some reason, I decided better to be over there. So, I'm working on it. Right. But what people do is they do the exact opposite. They think small, and then they start big. So they start to think about something they're going to do, and they're either in too much of a hurry, so they latch onto the very first idea they have, and it's sort of half baked, or they have a big idea and they're starting to talk about it, but then their mind says, no, you can't do that. That's too big. You're selling hot dogs. Who are you to think that you could sell a gourmet meal? Who do you think you are? That's your own mind. And then there's people around you saying that too. Okay. Like there are all these people saying, oh, I know that's too big. Right. So any discussions I've seen, like I have to preface the discussions about big ideas and say, let's not jump on these ideas. Let's just think big. And anybody starts, well, how do we do that? I go, I don't know. Like, don't worry about that. That's the whole process, is to figure that out ultimately. But people jump on these ideas so quickly, right? It's like there's a little seedling coming out of the ground and you stomp on it because it's not a giant oak, right? It's like, you nurture it, right? So we want to imagine something really big, but we don't. But then we start big. So we think small and then we start big. What do I mean by that? So you got this idea, right? Oh, we're going to sell screwdrivers or something, which I think ultimately would be a small idea. Well, and we got to build a big factory. Giant, let's get investors, and we got to get, so we're going to spend like 2 years building this giant factory and get all these investors. And then to find out that nobody actually really wanted screwdrivers, they actually wanted ladders. And then we've just, blown our brains out, kind of thing. So I've seen this over and over again, is that we think small and then we start big. And I guess it's just because we imagine that's what everybody else did, right? And we all think we don't realize that we actually are thinking small. But let's go back to think big and start small. That's the solution. So think big. So here's the best advice, is to imagine that it's $1 trillion business. Now, you may never want it to be $1 trillion business, but it's useful just to imagine it to be that, because that's going to open up your mind. You say, well, whoa, what would a $1 trillion business be like? I also think that in that thinking big, you got to think, well, what would be not just big, but what would be wonderful? What would be wonderful for me? So I go, well, if it was $1 trillion business, I'd also want it to be completely easy to run somehow. And it would make my life better. And so we spend a lot of time thinking about what that ideal thing would be. And we don't rush that. I'd rather spend way more time thinking about that than just jumping in to start building something, right? So we think a lot about this, and then big as we can. And if someone says, well, we don't know how to do that, or you don't know how to do that, or who do you think you are? And you go, you know what? I'm just thinking right now. I haven't done a thing yet, but I'm just allowing myself to imagine, right? And if you think, well, I'm not a creative person, have a hard time imagining things, just focus on your intention. So a good way to do that is to say, instead of saying, so much, well, it'd be $1 trillion business, fine, but how many people would you be helping? Well, we'd be helping millions of people, and we'd be helping them in this way, and they'd be it would be really they'd be so much better off because of this. So we focus on our intention, then we don't have to worry about being confident about it, because our intentions are something that no one can take away from us, right? I'm just trying to help 1 million people get better somehow. That would be really good. So think really big about that. And then, okay, now we're going to start small. Because some people are pretty good at thinking big, but then they get stuck because they go, well, it's just so overwhelming, right? And they go, yeah, we need version 1. Version 1. That's it. That's all we need. And what does version 1 look like? Well, it could be the simplest thing. But if I was going to create like a worldwide chain of gourmet restaurants, right? All over the world, be the world famous gourmet chef, famous, more famous than anybody, have my own TV show and everything. What do I got to do first? I got to go and cook a gourmet meal for somebody. Maybe I cook it for myself. Okay. I cook it and I eat it and I go, But it'd be even better, I go and cook it for a friend or something, or family member. I cook that gourmet meal. And I don't try to cook the fanciest French cooking or something with,
truffles and all that. I just think something that's gourmet enough, and I cook it for a friend, and it's a relatively simple gourmet meal, but it's gourmet, and and then I see how that goes. You know, I I'm not a gourmet chef. I'm not going to be a gourmet chef, but I've been doing a lot of cooking. And I I really like crumpets. I don't know if you like crumpets, but I can't imagine nobody liking crumpets. But I actually realized, oh, you could make your own crumpets. You could bake crumpets. I go. So I told my wife, we're going to bake crumpets. Okay. So she says, oh, really? Okay. So I look it up. I read how to do it. And I go, oh, I've got to go and get these little crumpet rings. Like there actually really is something. So we have this like fancy cooking store near our house. So I had to wait till I was really hot to trot to do this. So on a Sunday morning, so I got over there at 10 o'clock. I was the first one in. Do you have crumpet rings? They said, yes, we do. I go, I can't believe I've ever even knew this existed. Um, and so I got them. I came home and I mixed up the batter or the whatever what you'd call it, the dough, and then I put them in the little crumpet rings. Well, I put too much in, so these crumpets look like some sort of monster. Okay, like they were like these giant things, but they did taste like crumpets. So I said we're gonna eat them, but the second time, which I haven't done yet, we're gonna put less in there, and then I bet you by the time I've done 3 or 4 of those, I'm gonna have a pretty good crumpet. And then I always joke with my wife, and then we're going to open up a crumpet store because we're going to sell crumpets. But I'm not thinking too big about the crumpets, but I did have to start small, right? I didn't know how to do it. I had to get some equipment. So I had to invest something. It was like $20. And I had to do something I'd never done before. But I started small and I realized, okay, it's probably not going to come out very well. So I wasn't disappointed. I go, yeah, it's the first one. Like, but I know you're going to, when I get to the perfect crumpet, I will come back and tell you. Okay. But that's what people tend not to be willing to do. They don't want to do that first version where it comes out looking like some kind of weird entity, right? They go. That's why Elon Musk, in spite of all his idiosyncrasies, I do appreciate his process. Like he has the rockets go up, and he's gonna have the booster stage come down and land. Well, the first time it crashed, second time it crashed, third time it came down and landed perfectly, right? So that's kind of his method. He just keeps doing iterations, and each time it kind of something blows up, but he's going, okay, what do we learn from that? And next one, okay, went further, blew up again. What do we learn from that? Third time it's in orbit, right? And so that's the route to success. And I just find that so many people are unwilling to go through what they consider to be the pain of that first version of it. Like imagine if you were going to have YouTube. So you say, okay, I imagine this thing, it's a video sharing service where millions, trillions of people are going to, well, trillions, but trillions of videos are going to get sent back and forth. And um, that's my big vision of it. And what do I got to do first? Well, I got to get somebody to upload a video. So somebody did actually. There was the first video is 18 seconds. Somebody at the San Diego Zoo, 18 seconds, got uploaded. So it probably uploaded it to some really crummy website that was probably called MeTube or something. But they go, oh yeah, they've uploaded it. Now I'll get somebody else to look at that video and maybe comment on it, and then they'll upload a video. So they had to do one video, 18 seconds. That's how YouTube started. Everybody looks like, oh, I could never do anything like that. I go, no, it started with one little video. That was, and they didn't know what they were doing. They just had the big idea, right? So think big, start small, and that'll get you out of the start big mind block. Okay, number 4, very cryptically here, the one marshmallow mind block. Talking about marshmallows now. I was talking about crumpets, and now I'm talking about marshmallows. There's a food theme here. So there's this famous experiment that was done. I believe it was in the 60s. And maybe some of you know this. It's pretty famous. And they had these kids, little kids, probably like maybe 5 years old, maybe younger even. and they had him in a room, and there was like this, one-way mirror kind of glass they could see in. And so the doctor or whatever would come in, kid sitting there playing or something, and look, kid, I'm going to give you one marshmallow, okay? But if you can wait 10 minutes and not eat it, when we come back, I'll give you a second marshmallow. That's the deal. So kid was old enough to understand the deal, right? So then the doctor would leave. I guess it was a doctor would leave, and they would watch what the kid would do, right? So some kids would be able to wait the 10 minutes. They understood the deal, and they got the second marshmallow, right? And then other kids, they couldn't wait. They just ate the one marshmallow, and they didn't get the second one. They just ate it, right? Majority of kids ate the one marshmallow. Only a small number of them went for the two that had the discipline to wait. But the more interesting part of the study was that they followed them over time. And when, through their life, they realized the two marshmallow kids were the most successful by far, because they were able to look ahead and delay gratification, in order to get something better. And so that was an interesting study. There's been some other interesting discussion about that, but that's a basic point of it. So some people are one marshmallow people, and some people are two marshmallow people. I always said I told my wife, I said, you know what, I'm actually a 5 marshmallow person. And she said, what do you mean? I said, well, I would have eaten the one marshmallow, and when the doctor came back, I would have convinced them that the study was, about giving me actually more, and I talked them into giving me 4 more. That's what I hope I would have done. But anyway, don't worry about me. But anyway, but the idea is that most of us, unfortunately, are going for instant gratification. So if we look at Stephen Covey, he talks about the 7 habits of highly effective people, and he talks about how most of us get caught up in doing things that are urgent but not important. Okay, so we do things that are very, we got to do it right now. So we have our to-do list, and there's a whole bunch of little things on there, but we're not doing the things that are important but not urgent. So his habit, he said, effective people, is that those people focus on things that are important but not urgent, that they spend enough time doing that. So that's why I talked about new factory again, is say 11% of our time is on this new factory, which is very, very, very important for your future, but certainly not urgent, right? Like you could get away with not doing it today. Nothing's going to change. It's not going to look like anything bad happened. I didn't do it, so I didn't get. Nothing bad happened. But in the long run, you get stuck in the hot dog stand, right? Because you're going, why am I going to stay on the hot dog stand and spend 100%? Because I make money from that, and I can get that money. But if I go and work on the gourmet restaurant right now, I'm not making any money right now from that. That's going to be in the future. I'm going to make the money for that. Right? So we don't get the second marshmallow. We only get one. And so this is a huge mind block for all of us, because we just have to understand our own way of thinking. So I'm definitely somebody that would just want to take that marshmallow and just eat it. I mean, I really am. But I've learned to say, I have to find the discipline and the motivation, maybe better, to work on getting that second marshmallow. So I'm going to delay gratification right now to get that bigger thing. So this is also points to the idea, working in your business or working on your business, right? And we throw that one around all day long. But what does that really mean? Well, working in our business is dealing with, getting the satisfaction of the one marshmallow. Working on our business, say, I'm going to delay eating a marshmallow so I can get 2 later. So you might want to have a marshmallow on your desk or something, um, to remind you of that one. Okay, so the one marshmallow mind block is kind of fun. Look up that study, actually. It's very interesting. And the fifth one is the me first mind block, which maybe is the most insidious one, um, because when we're that way, it's just all about me, 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 me. And basically, we've been conditioned to think that way. You know, all advertising mostly is telling you about how special you are and how much you deserve and all this. And you deserve it all, right? And they make it all about you. They're smart. They're making it about you, but you're making it all. When you hear that, it makes you think more about yourself. And where is that is the problem? Well, you know, generally speaking, that's a problem, right? But in business, it's deadly because what we're not thinking about is our customer. We're not putting ourselves in their shoes, right? We're not seeing the world through their eyes. And so everything is a projection of us. And I seen this so many times. I say, and I have to tell people, I say, you are not your customer. Okay. Like they might say, you're telling me to charge my customer $10,000. Well, I would never pay $10,000 for that. I said, yeah, but you're not your customer, right? Maybe your customer is very affluent. Maybe you're not. You're not right now. So, but your customer is. Maybe they'd pay $10,000. Don't think of it from your perspective, because otherwise, you're thinking you're a focus group of one. Everything is run by you as far as, well, would you buy this? And you go, no, I would never pay that. I would never buy that. But you're not your customer. And so that's why I've been helpful to a lot of people, because I say, well, I'll pretend to be the customer, because it is hard to think that way, but I'll pretend to be them, and I'll tell you what I want and need and what my problems are. And I tell you, I don't care about you. I care about me. And this is what I want. Right. That's kind of helpful, because we're in the me first mind block. We're just thinking everything. We see the whole world from our perspective. And that's just not the way the marketplace works. It's the opposite way around, right? So what we want to do is start with, okay, who do I really want to help? And make your business all about that. Okay. Secondly, well, what are some big problems they have that no one's helping them with? Now, initially, when I ask people that question about their customers, they struggle with it because they haven't been thinking about that. They haven't been thinking about their customers' problems. Guess whose problems they've been thinking about? They've been thinking about their own problems, right? So everybody's going around thinking about their own problems. But really, what's the best way to solve your problem is to solve someone else's bigger problem, right? If you do that, most of your problems are going to go away, because you're going to be successful, and you can, and address it. And it's going to stop you just from thinking about yourself all the time. So we start thinking about other people's problems, your customers, and the big ones that no one's helping them with, because what, most people don't care about them, right? But let's say we do. We care about them. We want to help them. We can see that big problem. So for me, these days, the biggest problem is that people are old factory thinkers. That's what I recognize as their people's problem. They've got all these mind blocks. They're product first. They're thinking about business as the Industrial Revolution. They're not opening their minds up to all kinds of new possibilities. That's a huge problem. So I just call that old factory thinking, right? That's the problem. I named it. And then I go, well, my business is about helping people address that and get to this better place that I think they should, go to in general terms, which is having a new factory and using new factory thinking. I was able to develop all of that because I wasn't thinking about myself. Okay. And believe me, I spend a lot of time thinking about myself. That's being taken care of just very well, thank you. but when I sit down to do business, I go, that's not where my focus should be. It shouldn't be me first. Okay. I got to get past that mind block. And that, in a way, is the mother of them all, because once you start to get past that and you start thinking about other people and helping them, thinking about their big problems, there's no end to how successful you can be and how fulfilling things can be and how many new ideas and that you can come up with. And that just makes it way easier to reinvent yourself. Okay. And this is the thing about reinvent yourself, which could be an issue, is that's kind of me first, isn't it? To reinvent yourself. So it's kind of like better to think maybe to reinvent your customer. Okay. Like help them reinvent themselves. So once you do that, you're reinventing yourself too, right? So I'm going to be a gourmet chef. I'm going to reinvent myself as a gourmet chef. But really what I'm doing is I'm helping my customers reinvent themselves by enjoying a higher quality food and, a higher quality eating experience and so on. I'm reinventing them too, right? So let's really start to think about that. And just, and all of these mind blocks, quite honestly, are challenging because we have to be deadly honest about ourselves. That we actually can have mind blocks at all. Can you imagine saying that to somebody else? I have a mind block. How many people ever say that? Who's willing to admit that? Right? Therein lies the deadliest thing. We can't even admit it to yourself or to others, and therefore you're just dug in harder with your mind block. But if you could just start to say, yeah, I got a mind block. There's no harm. It's not like the worst thing. It's like everybody's got them. We've all got these. So once you have that honesty about yourself and being willing to tell other people, then that mind block's starting to go away. It's starting to go away. So hopefully those ideas are helpful to you. Let's go back here. There we go. So, like I say, there's actually 100 of these at least. And over time, I will address more. I guess I'll say we'll have the top, 6 to 10 next. But there are all kinds of other ones too. And this is actually really exciting because once you get it figured out and you start breaking through these, you can really see some improvement. Like when my tennis, so I started realizing the mind blocks I had there. Two things happened actually. One is I started winning way more. I ended up being ranked in tennis in Canada over 45 in the top 10 at one point. When I was in my late 40s, I ended up ranked 6 in the world in racquethlon, which was like the pentathlon of racket sports, 6 in the world in senior level, second in Canada for that. And none of that would have happened if I hadn't got through the mind block. Like it wasn't about my ability. It was about my mind. And it was like unbelievable how much there was an improvement there. And then the other thing that happened was I wrote a book about it. Because I thought, well, I'm just going to turn around and write a book about this experience. And that book has been very successful in the whole tennis world. So if you're not in the tennis world, you might not know about the book, but it's also a good book to read anyway. It's not, even if you don't play tennis, it's a pretty fun read too. But anyway, so there was so much benefit just from that one mind block that I got past that had been lurking there for my whole life. And it wasn't until I was 45 that I actually realized it. And as soon as I got past it, all kinds of great things happened. So actually my whole sports career, for what it's worth, was all happened after I was 45, So thank goodness for that. So I'm a big believer in breaking mind blocks. All right, so there you go. So that's a lot of food for thought, and hopefully you got something out of that.